The first shell hit at 5:12 local time. I was already in the sublevel vaults of the Halcyon archive, cross-referencing trade manifests from the Varaxan hegemony. My tea had gone cold an hour earlier. I remember the exact ceramic cup, cracked along the rim, a gift from my father before he disappeared on a research vessel near the Cygnus Arm. I was 26. I had never heard a weapon fired except in historical recordings. The tremor came without warning. Not an earthquake. I had felt those during my training on Meridian Station. This was a gravitational shear, the kind produced when 60 dreadnoughts drop from fold space inside a planet's lunar orbit. The floor bucked. My cup shattered against the wall. I watched the tea bleed into the stone floor like something alive. Above me, 600,000 people were beginning their day on Halcyon. The archive had been built deep, carved into the bedrock 3 centuries ago by a civilization that believed knowledge should survive even if cities did not. I pressed the emergency beacon with one hand and pulled the vault door closed with the other. The door weighed 4 tons. It sealed with a hiss that sounded, I thought later, like the last breath of something already dying. The bombardment lasted 9 hours. I counted. I always counted. I counted 412 impacts by sound alone. Each one vibrated through the bedrock, shaking dust from the archival shelves, rattling the sealed specimen cases that held the last genetic records of species already gone. The pattern was methodical, not wild destruction, but removal. The Varaxan hegemony did not wage war. They performed clearance. When silence finally came, I waited 2 hours before opening the vault. The air was thin. The filtration system had failed at hour 6. I climbed the emergency stairs, past cracked walls and fallen conduits, until I reached the surface. Halcyon was gone. Not burning. Not rubble. Absent. The archive's above-ground wing had vanished entirely, 300 years of curated history erased. The residential arcologies were craters, their edges smooth and glassy from directed energy. I stood at the ridge and looked at the place where my father's research tower had stood, and I did not weep. Weeping would have required time I did not have. The Varaxan survey ship found me 3 days later. They were not looking for survivors. They were cataloging resource availability. The commander looked at me with pale, unblinking eyes and said something to her aide in their clipped, efficient language. The word remnant was the only one I understood. I was transferred to a processing station at the edge of Varaxan space. The station was vast, efficient, and entirely indifferent, a bureaucratic waypoint where cleared worlds were logged and their resources assigned to Imperial projects. I spent 4 months there, catalogued as biological residue, unassigned, before a neutral diplomatic vessel from the Thalen Concord retrieved me under an obscure clause regarding sentient remains. The Thalen asked questions. I answered them precisely, with the numbers I had counted and the details I had retained. The Thalen ambassador, a woman with silver skin and eyes the color of deep water, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked what I intended to do now that I had nothing left. I told her I intended to read. She frowned. I explained, the Varaxan kept public archives. Their expansion program was documented exhaustively, survey reports, clearance authorizations, post-removal verification forms. They were proud of their efficiency. They had never considered that anyone they had cleared might survive to read the records of their own destruction. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I have never forgotten. "You are not asking for weapons." "No," I said. "I am asking for access to their library." She gave it to me. That was the beginning. The Thalen gave me a small room in their embassy complex, a desk, a terminal, a window that faced a garden I never looked at. I worked 16 hours a day. The Varaxan academic network was fully open, as they had never considered any species worth hiding it from. Their clearance authorizations followed a template that had remained unchanged for 3,000 years. By month 8, I had identified the pattern. Each clearance was preceded by a resource survey, followed by a biological assessment, then signed by a regional governor, then filed. The species being cleared appeared only once, in a field labeled interference classification, ranked from 1 to 7. 7 meant sentient with documented social organization. 7 meant requires clearance authorization. 7 meant my family. I found Halcyon's file on a Tuesday. The survey report was 3 pages. It noted abundant mineral deposits, viable agricultural soil, and a Category 7 sapient species with an estimated population of 612,000 units. The clearance was signed by Governor Vexel of the 3rd Expansion Fleet. The verification report noted 99.2% completion and added a single line. Minor biological remnants detected but considered operationally insignificant. I printed that line. I pinned it to the wall above my desk. Then I began building my document. I sent the document 13 years after Halcyon fell. 47 volumes. 200,000 source citations. 1,200 confirmed clearances. 800 billion lives, calculated from Varaxon's own records. I sent it to every open channel, the Galactic Council, every member world, every university, every news network. The cover letter was one sentence. Here is what your silence permitted. The Varaxon hegemony did not fall in a day. Empires do not collapse like buildings. They unravel, thread by thread, hearing by hearing, confession by confession. The Council formed an investigative panel. The Varaxon denied everything until the document forced them to sit in a chamber while their own administrative codes were read aloud. Governor Vexel, old now and frail, testified that he had merely followed procedure. The audience, 400 species, many of whom had known for centuries, sat in absolute silence. The verdict came after 2 years. Reparations. Territorial concessions. The suspension of the clearance program. The abdication of the Varaxon Emperor. None of it brought back Halcyon. None of it returned my father's name from the unit's removed column. But yesterday, a young researcher from a species I had never heard of contacted me. She had used my document to prove her people's homeworld had been taken, not lost. She asked if she could cite my work. I said yes. Then I turned back to my terminal. There were older files. Deeper records. More names to recover. I am still counting. I will always be counting. I am old now. My hands ache when I type. But the document lives without me, archived across 3,000 nodes, translated into 200 languages, taught in schools on worlds I will never visit. The Varaxon clearance program is finished. The last clearance authorization was signed 20 years ago, and the official who signed it is now serving a sentence in a tribunal that bears my document's reference number in its founding charter. Yesterday, a young Varaxon scholar came to see me. She was gray-skinned, pale-eyed, no more than 25. She stood in my doorway and said she had read the document as a student. She said it had broken something in her, the certainty that her civilization was merely efficient, not monstrous. She asked if I hated her people. I thought about the maintenance tunnel, the cold metal wall, the coffee cup with the coastline painted on it, the count I kept through 9 hours of bombardment. No, I said. I wanted the record. The record does not hate. It holds. She wept. I did not stop her. Weeping, I have learned, is part of the holding. After she left, I walked to the garden behind my home. There is a stone there, placed by the Thalen ambassador before she died. It bears no name, only a number, 812 billion. The count I finalized on a Tuesday afternoon with cold tea beside me and the weight of 13 years in my shoulders. I sat beside the stone. The sun was warm. Somewhere across the galaxy, a researcher I will never meet was opening my document for the first time, about to learn something that would change her, the way I was changed in a tunnel, counting strikes, refusing to look away. I thought, this is what survives. Not empires. Not fleets. The record. The one who kept it. The ones who read it after. I stood up. I went inside. My tea was waiting.